Ochako looked at Midoriya for a long moment, then promptly burst into tears. Oh, thank goodness. I. Please tell you know what's going on. Midoriya gave her a sheepish smile as he sat down on the bed beside her. Not yet, but we're gonna figure it out together, okay? We can do this. Ochako took a deep breath and wiped her eyes. Yeah. We can do this. What do you need to know? Midoriya grabbed a notebook out of his pocket and opened it to a fresh page. Alright, so first of all, do you know where you are? Well, you're interning on Island. So, Ochako thought for a moment. Well, either I'm on Island somehow, or you came back early. Midoriya laughed. It's the first one. Do you know how you got here? Was there a villain involved? No. I was at Gunhead's agency, so there wasn't a villain. Ochako racked her brain. 1 minute I was sparring with Shinso. She felt gravity shift again, but not as intensely as it had last time, and she was still in the hospital when it righted itself just in time for her to throw up again. Thankfully, the nurses had had the foresight to put a tub beside the bed, and Midoriya just tossed his notebook out of the splash zone and rubbed her back until she was finished. Ah. Ochako wiped her mouth. I'm sorry, that's gross. Well, you were suffering from quirk exhaustion. Midoriya reminded her. Which? Well, what else do you remember? Well, it was kinda like what happened just now. Ochako grimaced. I was completely fine this morning, but then I got really dizzy and all of a sudden I was someplace else. Izuku made a note of something. Any other details? What you were trying to do during the spar, what you were thinking about, etc. Ochako thought for a moment. I mean, in the spar, I was just trying to keep Shinso from pinning me, but I was also thinking about how once internships were over, I needed to talk to Mei about. Izuku jerked back in surprise as Uraraka just disappeared into thin air. Sure, there were slight traces of some sort of light, but mostly, she simply blinked out of existence, exactly like Shinso had described. It was a weird sight and he almost didn't believe his eyes, but at least now he could form some theories. Dr. Shield. He looked up from his notebook. You wouldn't happen to have any equipment for measuring gravitational fields on this island, would you? The moment Okako felt gravity shift again, she tensed. Even though she'd half been expecting it this time, the bed disappearing out from under her was still a shock and she didn't have nearly enough time to get her feet under her before she was falling hard on the floor. Seriously? Which of you beautiful babies decided to fall off that? Mei circled the table and she stopped and blinked when she saw Ochako on the floor, the gesture looking even more strange with the way her eyes were magnified underneath her goggles. Oh, hi gravity girl. I didn't see you come in. You're supposed to be missing, so how did you get all the way out here? Ochako groaned and flopped down on the floor. Yeah, that's what I'd like to know. Mei hummed, well, as long as you're here, you may as well earn your keep. I need an extra set of hands. Ochako nodded and groaned as she stood up. She still felt unbearably nauseous, but she didn't feel like she was going to lose what was left of her breakfast at any moment, so that was a positive. Maybe it was because she didn't go as far this time? But, of course, that brought up the question of why she'd gone at all, and Ochako wasn't sure she really wanted the answer to that. Mei handed her what looked like the handle of a lightsaber. Just hold that part steady, alright? Ochako nodded again and let Mei do her thing, but her thoughts started to spiral again and she bit her lip nervously as she remembered the reason why she'd been thinking about Mei in the first place. Hatsume? Do you mind if I ask you something? Sure, but Hatsume is too formal. Mei tightened another screw. I thought I told you to call me Mei. Ochako half smiled. Hey, yeah. Why did you choose to go into support? Mei grinned. It's fun. I get to make so many wonderful babies. Ochako frowned, and, is that why you want to have your own company too? I could work for somebody else and still make cool stuff. Mei stuck out her tongue in disgust. But if I'm gonna make these babies, I want everybody to know who made them. It's branding. One day, I'm gonna be famous for all these beautiful babies, just you wait and see. But, Ochako struggled to figure out a polite way to phrase it before realizing that May probably didn't care. Isn't that kinda selfish? Yeah. May tightened something else on her device. So? Ochako stared at her. So? May cackled. A lot of people have this really stupid idea that being selfish is bad. Just like they think failure is bad. But failure is how you make wonderful babies. If being selfish helps motivate me to be a better inventor, then why in the world wouldn't I do that? Huh. Ochako blinked a few times, feeling like the world had shifted underneath her in a way that wasn't literal. I guess I'd never thought of it like that. That's because too many people limit themselves and don't give in to the best ideas. May declared, tightening one final screw and taking the device from Ochako. If something isn't helping, throw it out. And if something is helping, then make it a part of the design. Ochako smiled as May turned on her device, only to frown when nothing happened. May, however, just shrugged and threw the device over her shoulder. The original design was better. Back to the drawing board. Ochako laughed. If at first you don't succeed, then use that failure to fuel your next success. May returned with a wide grin. Hand me that wrench. Oh, and I'm glad you're all right, by the way. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Shinso said you just went poof. Ochako groaned. I'm dunno. Before I came to talk to you, I was hoping that Midoriya could. The gravity shifted again and Ochako had to resist the urge to scream in frustration as she found herself on a random street, somewhere. She was just so done with the whole thing. She felt emotionally and physically exhausted and she just wanted to stay still for a little while. Was that really too much to ask? At least she was finally getting used to the sensation. Ochako still didn't know what was going on, but she was almost certain at this point that it was One for All's fault, even if she couldn't pinpoint how. Alright, so maybe trying to push all that power down until it blew up hadn't been the best idea, because her new quirk obviously wasn't letting her repress it anymore, considering she could potentially end up halfway across the world with just a stray thought. Alright, how did I do this last time? Ochako grumbled. I was just thinking about Midoriya and... Gravity shifted and Ochako felt a brief sense of pride until she looked around at her new location and Midoriya was nowhere to be seen. You've got to be kidding me. Izuku popped his head into the lab. Hey, kind of a weird question, but have you seen Uraraka? May looked up from her current project, she just popped out. Of course. Izuku groaned. Did she give any clue of where she was going? No. May shrugged, then thought for a minute. But I think she was talking about you when she disappeared. That. Alright, that makes sense. Izuku scribbled a few things down in his notebook. Her quirk must be using people to anchor her when she warps, but the only question is which people. And of course where she ended up this time. If you were her anchor point, Izuku, May pointed out, then shouldn't she be with you? You'd think so, but no. Izuku jumped up to sit on the table. Her quirk uses gravity, but that's such a widespread force that she's probably only able to approximate her target, at least right now. May hummed, I didn't even know she could teleport. Neither did she. Izuku shook his head in amusement. I'm still trying to figure out why, but it's like her quirk got more powerful overnight and now she's dealing with a new manifestation of it. It's really cool, but she hasn't had time to develop the ability, so she doesn't have any way to stop herself from warping. Or any way to predict where she'll end up. May finished. She pushed her project to the side and started grabbing more materials. Well, I can help with one of those. Dr. Shields smiled and lifted the tarp. It's been a while since I had an excuse to dust off this old baby. Melissa rolled her eyes. You realize you could take it out for a spin at any time, right? You're just old and boring. Is that the car you and All Might used during his study abroad? Izuku's eyes were wide as he dissolved into a muttering storm of facts. The technology was state-of-the-art at the time and still holds up under today's standards. The engine alone is. Come on, Izu-kun, you can nerd out in the car. May grabbed him by the collar and hauled him into the back seat. The device in her hand was only mostly finished, but Dr. Shield had been tracking the gravitational fields around the island and Uraraka's warps were becoming more frequent, so they needed to find her before she accidentally ended up in the water or something. Alright, Midoriya. Your turn to navigate, Melissa said, strapping herself into the passenger seat as Dr. Shield started the car. You connected your laptop to the gravity sensors, right? Yeah, Izuku said. I'm probably going to have to write a program to really track her, but for now these readings will at least tell us when she moves and get us in the general ballpark of where she is. Oh, she moved again. Head west. Well, I'm glad someone found it entertaining. Ochako grumbled. I honestly wasn't expecting to learn how to teleport when I woke up this morning. I know. Everyone back in Japan was really, Izuku's eyes widened. Wait, May, did you ever tell anyone we found her? May frowned. No, I think I assumed you told them and then I was too focused on the tracking bracelet to think about anything else. I believe that our people were focused on making sure our security was up to date and incorporating a warning for gravitational shifts. Dr. Shield scowled. How did we forget that? Didn't you ever call them, Midoriya? Melissa asked. Izuku groaned and put his head in his hands. No, I was busy trying to figure out the quirk science of how she was even warping. Everyone's probably still freaking out. May shrugged and grabbed her phone. Well, better late than never. Shota wasn't doing well. All the teachers had been called in and some of the more adept reporters were starting to realize that something was wrong. Uraraka's parents had been contacted and were with a police escort, but there wasn't a whole lot they could tell them. Their daughter had been missing for over 4 hours now and they still hadn't found a single lead. All Might and Tsukauchi were all gathered in Nedzu's office, grimly combing through what meager evidence they could find as they came to terms with the fact that they had failed as teachers and as heroes. His phone rang and he took one look at caller ID before picking up. Hatsume, please tell me you're safe. I really don't have the time or energy to deal with two. Oh, I know. May interrupted. I thought you might want to know that we found your missing student. Shota immediately sat up straight. You found Uraraka? How did you even? Never mind, I'm putting you on speaker. Where is she? May cackled. She's sitting right next to me. Say hi, Gravity Girl. Uraraka's voice sounded tired, but she was there. Hi, Sensei. Sorry for worrying you. Nedzu came closer to Tayphone. Never mind that, young lady. Are you all right? I'm tired and overused my quirk, but I'm already getting my energy back. Uraraka's voice echoed with a kind of forced cheerfulness. Don't worry, I'm gonna be fine. I'm glad to hear it, Nedzu said. Although, if you are with young Midoriya and Hatsume, then. Yeah, that means she's here on Island, Midoriya said. It's complicated. It took us a few hours to even realize she was here, but we're working on it. I'm assuming that Shinso was the one that told you she was missing? Shota asked tiredly. I would probably lecture him about confidentiality, but I guess it's a good thing you were aware she was missing. Oh, I'd almost forgotten about Shinso. Uraraka fretted. He's probably so. Shota looked at the receiver in confusion as there was a brief shout and then he heard the phone drop and the audio became slightly muffled as Midoriya started speaking. Uraraka, focus on me, okay? Don't think about Shinso or anyone else, just focus on me and May and where we are right. And she's gone. May? Already on it. There was the sound of shuffling as the phone was picked up and Shota looked at the others in confusion and worry. What did Midoriya mean she's gone? Ah. Sorry, I really didn't think she had enough energy for that already. Midoriya said finally. But, good news. Uraraka's back in Japan and we'll send Shinso her location so he can pick her up. She's back in Japan? All Might stuttered. Young Midoriya, that's at least a 5-hour journey. Midoriya sighed, not really. Do you want the short explanation or the long one? Nezu took the phone. I believe any explanation will do at the moment. Midoriya, thank you. That made Midoriya chuckle. I guess that's true. Well, basically, I guess I should start by saying that Uraraka does not have a gravity cancellation quirk like we thought. Her quirk, which I think got a lot stronger recently for some reason, is actually some sort of gravity manipulation, since according to the theory of relativity gravity is basically just bends in spacetime, then, well, Uraraka can use gravity manipulation to warp. May finished. She uses people as her anchors. Most likely people that she's already used her quirk on. Midoriya interrupted. Otherwise she would have teleported to you, Eraserhead. Yeah, that. May agreed. But she can't control it yet, which is why we fitted her with a tracker. She's across town from Gunhead's agency, and I'm sending her location to Shinso. Now. She'll probably be a little worse for wear when he finds her. Midoriya added. The warp here knocked her out for over 2 hours. Let us know if you have any questions. Good luck. May hung up, leaving a room full of shocked adults to process whatever that had been. Well, All Might cleared his throat awkwardly. At least it wasn't villains? Chapter 47. Found. Could tell that Edgeshot was smiling. Nope, I can't believe that. What did you call her? Eeper? I'm pretty sure she thinks you're her kitten. What? Shoto blinked. I'm sorry, but you're mistaken. I'm much larger than a kitten. Edgeshot rolled his eyes. Yes, I'm aware of that. But adoption is pretty common in cats, actually, and they'll even adopt babies from other species if the real parents aren't around. To her, she may not have given birth to you, but she's acting like she just woke up one day and decided to be your mother. So I'm sorry to break it to you, Shoto, but you're adopted. Shoto huffed softly. Well, Eeper just needs to give me a good scratch and I'll have scars from both my moms. Edgeshot frowned. What was that? Sorry, you were muttering and I didn't quite catch it. Oh, nothing. Shoto shook his head. Wait a minute. Are those people taking pictures? Edgeshot chuckled again. Are you kidding? Kid, this is why we go on patrol. You're going to be trending by the time school lets out. Oh. Shoto took a deep breath and Eepor's presence on his shoulder was oddly steadying considering that this was all her fault. Okay. That's a good thing, right? Yes. Edgeshot shook his head in amusement. Yes, Shoto. That's a very good thing. Hitoshi looked down at his phone again, then up at the park. Well, according to Izuku and May, she should be somewhere around here, hopefully. They did warn me that she might disappear again though, so I guess I could text and ask if they know anything. Gunhead nodded. Yes, that would probably be best. Hitoshi was halfway through a text when a yell from the playground caught his attention. No. Get away from there. You don't know what kinds of diseases that thing has. A little girl was trying to tug Herschel free as her mother pulled her away. It's not a thing, it's a person. What if they need to go to the hospital? She caught sight of Hitoshi and Gunhead and immediately started waving them over with her whole arm. Are you guys heroes? We need your help. They shared a glance before Gunhead put on a happier voice and bounced over, of course. We can't stay along. We're looking for someone you see, but I'm sure we can get someone to help out with whatever the issue is. It's not an issue. The mother groaned. It's just a drunk who decided that the playground was a good place to sleep after a mid-morning bender. I looked up from my phone and there she was, a raggedy thing puking in the trash can before crawling in the tunnel and passing out. Disgusting. I mean, she wasn't even wearing any shoes. I don't want my daughter being around those kinds of influences, I'm sure you understand. She was puking? Shinso blinked. Where did you say she went? Over there in the play tunnel. The little girl slipped out of her mom's grip and grabbed Hitoshi's hand. Here. I'll take you to her. Aya. Get back here right this instant. Aya didn't listen as she dragged Hitoshi to the playground and tugged him to the ground outside the tunnel. Look. There. Can you help her? I am so sorry. Aya's mother grabbed her by the shoulder as Hitoshi knelt down to look inside the tunnel. You need to apologize to the heroes. You can't just go grabbing them, they have important things to do. But, Mom. Aya started to protest, but stopped when she saw Hitoshi's face. Mr. Hero? What is it? What's wrong? Nothing. Hitoshi tried to smile reassuringly, but he had a feeling it fell flat. I just need to yell at my friends to make sure they give me all the information next time they send me to find someone. Gunhead. Over here. I found her. The sunset was beautiful and Kurogiri wished he could pay it the attention it deserved, but young Tamura was enjoying the view for a very different reason. He grinned as he scratched at his neck, the 3 Nomu that Sensei had given him standing dead-eyed and at the ready, waiting for their orders. Even if he should be used to it by now, it was still creepy enough to send a shiver down Kurogiri's spine. I'll show him. Shigaraki grinned. Let's see who's in the news tomorrow, Hero Killer. Chapter 48. Warm. Chair. But after half a second, he breathed a sigh of relief as he double-checked that Uraraka was here. She was safe on Gunhead's couch. She was fine. He chuckled and shook his head. Yeah, well, for all I know, you did. What happened? Izuku and Mei didn't give me any details on what happened, they just told me where to find you. We were all so worried about you. Uraraka played with a bracelet on her wrist that Hitoshi didn't recognize. Sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, Shindig. I just was stupid and thought I could just push it down, but then I lost control. Yeah, somehow I ended up on Island. Hitoshi blinked. Can you maybe run that by me again? Uraraka sighed. I accidentally bent space-time, teleported to Island. Yeah, it's about as crazy as it sounds. Whoa. Hitoshi took a second to process that. That's one hell of a quirk evolution, I guess. That made Uraraka snort and she shook her head as she sat up. Yeah. It's great. And what's even better is that I can't stay put because I can't control it yet. It's a real joy. Hitoshi chuckled and ran a hand through his hair, so that's why you disappeared. And why I'll probably disappear again. Uraraka nodded and slumped back against the armrest. I feel like I'm turning into you. I'm just exhausted. He gave her a small smile. Are you sure you want to add a terrible sleep schedule to everything you've got going on? No. Uraraka rubbed her eyes. How about this, Shindig, you keep your sleep issues and I keep my disappearing act. Deal? She held out her hand for a fist bump and Hitoshi returned it. Deal. Also, where did the Shindig nickname come from? It's not bad, it's just. Why? Uraraka chuckled. It's dumb. I just wanted payback after you confused the hell out of everyone with your quirk activation requirements at the sports festival and thought a dumb nickname would be a fun way to confuse you back. She frowned. Not that I haven't done a bang-up job of that already. Yeah, you definitely threw me for a loop, but whatever. Hitoshi shrugged. Am I supposed to have a nickname for you? I mean, you have one for me and I did just pull you out of a play tunnel an hour ago, so. Uraraka blushed and buried her face in her hands. Don't remind me. That's so embarrassing. Those kids probably thought I was crazy or something. Drunk, actually. Hitoshi pointed out helpfully. So, what nickname do you want? Uraraka groaned. Desperately scratched behind Ippor's ear. What were you thinking? You can't leave me like she did. I won't let you. Ippor was shivering in his arms and Shoto realized with a start that he was hurting her. He had been creating ice for hours. He knew he was basically a human glacier at this point, and yet, here he was, holding himself right up against her as her hisses and meows grew a little weaker. He hesitated. He'd vowed to never use his father's side in battle, and even if this was just a rescue, it was still undeniably a battle, but... Ipper gave another violent shiver and Shoto's face hardened in determination. His left side was his father's side, but if it meant saving this stupid cat, he'd just have to steal it back. It wasn't his father's side, not anymore. It was his, and he wasn't about to let that flame-bearded bastard hurt anyone else he cared about ever again. He activated his fire side, careful not to warm up too quickly so he didn't burn her, and she'd barely stopped shivering when Edgeshot squeezed his way through one of the cracks. That was reckless, kid, but it looks like you got it done. Good job. Shoto uncurled himself slightly as Ipper started hissing again and scratching to be let down. I don't know what's gotten into her. She just wouldn't come. Edgeshot frowned and looked at her. Cats are smarter than we give them credit for, that one in particular. I'm pretty sure she wants you to follow her. Shoto looked down at the cat in his arms, who was still fighting to leave, and nodded as he let her go. Okay. Lead the way. Ipper scratched at the cold wall of ice that her kitten had made and hissed at him to go faster. She didn't know why he was so cold today when he was normally so warm, but they didn't have time for that. His littermate was in trouble. She'd been trying to avoid the chaos, she really had. A cat didn't survive on the streets as long as she had if they were stupid enough to run toward every fight they saw, but when she'd been looking for a quiet corner to lay low, she'd caught a scent. It was familiar, at least a little, and she recognized it as one of the scents that always clung to him when he visited her from the other kittens he spent his days with. His littermates. But the other kitten was in trouble and Ipper couldn't do anything against an attacker with such big claws. Her kitten was strong though, even though he didn't think so, and it was her responsibility to make sure her kitten was socialized correctly and knew how to treat and protect his littermates. She had to get him. She'd been so focused that she'd almost put herself in danger too, but her kitten had saved her and even warmed himself up in the process, which in any other situation would have made her purr with happiness, but today, she needed to take care of him and he needed to take care of that other poor kitten. Her kitten melted a hole in the ice large enough for both of them to crawl through and Ipper immediately shot off like a rocket, weaving through the familiar alleys and only stopping occasionally to let her kitten and his babysitter catch up. Almost there. When she reached the alley, the attacker was already gone and the scent of blood made her hiss and crinkle her nose, screaming for her kitten as she pawed at his littermate. He was still warm, still alive for now, but if her kitten didn't help him soon. She turned to look at her kitten as he pounded into the alley, skidding to a stop and gasping as she urged him to stop gawking and just hurry already. He just kept staring though, and a soft whisper escaped him as he stood rooted to the cement, Iida. Thankfully, her kitten's babysitter wasn't more than a few seconds behind and he was at least a little calmer than her poor stressed-out kitten, grabbing at his ear and speaking to someone that she couldn't see. Paramedics? This is Edgeshot. I need 2 ambulances to my location, priority 1. Chapter 49. Anchor. Able to do. It's fulfilling and I'm able to be successful and even respected. That never would have happened if I'd still been chasing after an impossible dream. Melissa nodded and she looked like she was about to say something when the door to the testing room slammed open and May came out, covered head to toe in soot. I figured it out. We just need to vaporize everything that's unnecessary. Back to work. Izuku smiled and shook his head fondly, rolling his eyes when Melissa shot him a knowing smile. They may just be friends, but he was beyond lucky to have a friend like her. Everyone's in position, Hitoshi said. You ready? Uraraka scrunched her nose in frustration. No. I'm probably not gonna be able to find any of them. It's gonna be so embarrassing. Yeah. Hitoshi nodded. Sure will. Uraraka glared at him. Gee thanks, Shindig. I'm glad I have your undying support. You're welcome. He gave her a shit-eating grin. But, hey, now you have to prove me wrong. She kept her glare up for as long as she could before bursting into a fit of laughter. This is gonna be terrible. Who should I try to find first? Gunhead maybe? Hitoshi shrugged. I mean, it is his agency, so. The app Izuku had sent him beeped and Hitoshi blinked as he watched Uraraka disappear. When she was actually trying to jump, the process was a little bit slower than when she did it by accident, and he couldn't keep his jaw from dropping at what he saw. It only lasted a split second, but for that tiny moment after Uraraka had activated her quirk and before she'd warped to wherever she was thinking of, it was like the entire energy of the universe had lit up around her. He didn't know if it was because she was messing with space and gravity or if it was just something about her quirk, but it was one of the most beautiful sights he had ever seen. Uraraka had been surrounded by the aurora borealis. Chapter 50. Possibilities. She jammed her earphone jack at him and he only just managed to close his eyes in time. Yeah, shut up. Ooh, Mineta smirked. I like a girl who takes charge. Jiro gagged, gross. I'm going to go get lunch. Don't you dare follow me. Normally, he would have ignored her and followed her anyway, but he'd gotten a text from Kurogiri earlier to call as soon as possible, which normally meant a mission. There was a chance it was just another side quest from Shigaraki, but it was always possible that the assignment came from All for One, in which case, it was best not to ignore it. After checking to make sure Mount Lady wouldn't miss him, he found a quiet alleyway to duck into and pulled out his phone. It rang twice before Kurogiri picked up. Hello. I hope your information gathering is going well. Of course it is. Mineta grinned. I'm not an amateur. I should hope not. Kurogiri drawled. Otherwise this next mission would be far outside of your expertise. Oh? Mineta started to get excited. And what is the next mission? Stain. Kurogiri said simply. Sensei wants you to capture him. Mineta choked. Capture Stain? The hero killer? Will that be a problem? Kurogiri challenged. I thought that with your quirk, capturing a man who relies on hit and run techniques would be child's play, but if not, I can always let Sensei know that. I'll do it. Mineta assured quickly. Just ask Sensei when he wants it done. You have 2 weeks. Kurogiri responded. Don't disappoint us. Ochako felt like she was finally getting the hang of this teleportation thing. She couldn't quite use it in a fight yet, but in tonight's game of hide and seek, she'd been able to consistently get to approximately the same hallway as her target, even if she'd never managed to find the correct room. She was getting used to the sensations of both teleportation and One for All, and she was even starting to figure out how different anchor points felt. It wasn't much, but it was still progress. The system Midoriya had suggested for preventing her warps worked decently well, and with Tei extra warning, Shinso was able to stop her about half the time. They never had more than a few seconds, though, which meant that Shinso had to tell her how his quirk worked. He'd pulled her aside just before breakfast and she'd been terrified at first because he just looked so nervous. I need to be able to brainwash you quickly, Uraraka. He'd refused to look her in the eye as he spoke. Which means that I can't afford the time it takes to confuse you. So confusion is what activates your quirk. Ochako had yelled. No, Shinso had somehow gotten even more nervous. Its verbal response. She'd had to spend the rest of the morning coaxing him to talk to her, which was mildly frustrating, but she understood why. People had probably avoided answering his questions in the past, but he hadn't taken control of her when they'd talked before, so why would he now? Plus, it made it significantly easier for her to stay put, because as soon as Shinso's phone gave them the notification, he just said her name like it was a question and all she had to do was say yes so he could order her not to teleport. It felt so cool that she was in the know that it almost made up for her not being able to stop on her own. Almost. As soon as Gunhead released them for the evening, one of the other interns, a second year named Shindo from Ketsubutsu, immediately called out for everyone's attention. All right, guys, dinner time. Who wants to go out to eat? She looked over at Shinso, who shrugged. I could eat. Let's walk together. One of the guys turned to her, and no cheating. You can't teleport to get there faster. Ochako rolled her eyes. You know that's not how my quirk works. I'd need an anchor point already at the restaurant. Still, Don't worry about her falling behind. Shinso smirked. You remember how strong she is from when she made you eat the mat earlier. The guy groaned as everyone else laughed and Ochako fell into step with the group, Shinso right beside her. He was good at making sure the other boys didn't make fun of her, but she was also proving that she deserved to be there in her own right as well. Sure, she still lost more spars than she won, but she did win. It was a good feeling. So, Shindo slowed down so he was walking beside them. What are you guys gonna do when you get back to Ue? Shinso shrugged. Probably make sure my kidnappers don't destroy more than about 30% of the school. Shindo gave him a vaguely concerned look. That's good? What about you, Uraraka? Oh, you know. She gestured vaguely. Don't do drugs, stay in school. Well, that one probably won't work very well, actually. Shinso tried and failed to hold back a snort. Yeah, she'll probably just be here and there. She gets around, you know? Shindo sighed and shook his head. I don't know what I expected. Do you guys have other friends? Are they just as bad as you two are? Oh, my kidnappers definitely are. Shinso nodded. And we're working on corrupting the rest. Are you kidding? Half of them are already corrupted. Ochako laughed, not really registering when Shinso got a text. I mean, last month, Mina pulled this prank where a wave of nausea hit her, followed by a wave of frustration when she realized she didn't have a clue where she was. Dang it. Mina was having a blast. Yoroi Musha was way more dignified than she was used to, but it made him fun to play off of. Plus, she was learning a lot about being a hero, although she wasn't afraid to admit that she was just a little bit jealous of Todoroki. He got to meet a cute cat and go viral? Seriously? How was that fair? They were half an hour into their evening patrol when her phone rang. Loudly. She flinched and looked up at Yoroi sheepishly. Guess I forgot to put it on silent? He had a small smile on his face and she almost deflated in relief when she realized he wasn't angry, just amused. It's a slow night, so you can go ahead and answer it. Perhaps it's important. A hero should always be reachable. Mina nodded and hurried to answer the phone. Pinky here. What can I do for y'all? To her surprise, Shinso's voice greeted her on the other end. Is Uraraka with you? Uraraka? Mina frowned. Aren't you both interning with Gunhead? Shouldn't she be with you? Theoretically. Shinso groaned. Can you just take a look around and tell me if you see her anywhere? Sure? Mina pulled the receiver away and turned back to Yoroi, who was looking at her with one eyebrow raised in question. It's a friend of mine. He was asking if another friend was with me. Yoroi frowned. Are they interning in this city? No, they're about an hour away. Mina answered as she started scanning the street. So I'm not sure why she would be here, but... Oh. Ochako. Over here. Ochako was still in workout clothes, but she was grinning as she jogged toward them. Hey Mina. I was wondering when I was gonna run into you. What are you doing here? Mina asked, giving her a quick hug. I thought you were interning with Gunhead. Oh, I am. Ochako assured her. It's just that things have been super weird lately, but enough about me. How are you? I'm good, Mina said. I mean, it's super fun and I'm learning a lot, but, are you allowed to be so far away from your agency? Oh, this is nothing. Uraraka muttered. I mean, technically no, but again, everything's been super weird. Yeah, Mina frowned. I was just so surprised when Shinso called. Oh wait. I totally forgot to tell him I found you. She held the forgotten phone up to her ear, glancing away from Uraraka for a second. Hey Shinso? Yeah, I found her? Wait, where? Oh, she's back. Shinso said suddenly. Well, down the street, but close enough. Thanks Mina. See you later. You're welcome? Mina let the phone fall after he hung up. He said she's back with him? Yoroi looked just as confused as she felt. I thought you said they were interning an hour away? They are. Mina looked at the spot Uraraka had been just a second before. Super weird.